At this time, I invite you to turn your attention to the screen to watch a short introduction video. I'll get out of your way.
Welcome everyone to the Cyber Workforce Summit 2.0. We are thrilled to have you here for what promises to be an incredible 3 days. This year's theme is Forging Cyber Warriors, and each of you is a vital part of that mission. In a world of evolving digital threats, our cyber warriors are the first line of defense. Now, we're sharpening their edge together. In cooperation with the Department of War, CIO, and the National Defense University, AFCEA International is proud to host this forum. Over the next few days, you'll have the unique opportunity to hear directly from Department of War leadership during our keynote presentations. Move beyond directives and hear the strategic vision firsthand. This year, the summit brings together the architects of our national defense to deliver unparalleled insights. From the Department of War, discover the policy and talent strategies forging our arsenal of freedom. From the commanders of U.S. Fleet Cyber Command and DISA, gain the operational perspective on securing the DoDIN and maintaining combat readiness. From the Joint Staff and U.S. Strategic Command, understand how the cyber workforce directly enables the joint fight and national deterrence. And from the Service G6, learn how we are empowering the frontline cyber warrior at the tactical edge. You'll get the latest information on critical initiatives like DoD 8140 implementation, cyber accepted service, and cyber academic engagement. We'll also have exclusive highlights from the Cyber Service Academy and insightful Q&A panels with experts from academia and industry. And get ready for some excitement. You will witness emerging tactics, techniques, and procedures as the future leaders from our U.S. service academies and senior military college cyber institutes battle a live OPFOR in our inaugural cyber workforce competition. To succeed in today's environment, the Department of War must continue forging a qualified workforce to win in cyberspace. This week is all about collaboration, learning, and strengthening our collective mission. We encourage you to connect with your peers, engage with the speakers, and take full advantage of every session. Have a fantastic week. Strengthen the mission. Secure the future. Welcome to the summit.
That's pretty energizing. All right, so now that we're all energized, I'm pleased to be able to introduce our next speaker, Lieutenant General Paul Stanton. He's going to provide an operational perspective on behalf of cyber warriors. General Stanton is the commander of the Department of War Cyber Defense Command and the director of the Defense Information Systems Agency. General Stanton drives unified action across the department to secure, operate, and defend the Department of War Information Network, also known as the DoDIN. As DISA director, the general manages a global network of more than 20,000 military, civilian, and contract personnel, providing defense communication solutions to the president and the Department of War, supporting more than 200,000 warfighters across 150 countries. General Stanton's presentation today is The Readiness Revolution, Surgical Hiring and Qualification in the Cyber Domain. Please join me in welcoming General Stanton.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate the intro. General Lawrence, great to see you, ma'am. Paul, Mike, Ms. Fu, thanks for hosting us today. Mark, thanks for leading us out from a DOW CIO perspective. On behalf of my boss, Honorable Davies, It's my honor to provide some introductory comments, remarks, some thoughts, hopefully to energize dialogue discussion as you carry through this week. It's not lost on me that as I stand here this morning, I missed 4 op-tempo engagements running at my headquarters. The first meeting on our daily basis in our battle rhythm occurs at 06:45 to make sure that we understand the status of our operating environment prior to my 07:30 with the commander of U.S. Cyber Command and the director of the NSA, followed by 2 subsequent update meetings, because let there be no mistake, currently the fight is on. And we have an inherent responsibility to ensure that we are getting the right data to the right place at the right time to make a better and faster decision than our adversaries every minute. If you walked out onto the Ops Center floor at our headquarters in Fort Meade, where the Defense Information Systems Agency and the Department of War Cyber Defense Command jointly manage an operations center, it would fill you with pride to watch our service members, our contractors, our civilians executing with disciplined initiative to ensure that the warfighters have what they need, overcoming challenges in real time, defeating adversaries in cyberspace as they emerge, defending our environment to ensure that the right data is at the right place at the right time. It's an absolute imperative. I have a speech that my team helped put together. And frankly, if I'm off my A game today, it's only because my head is churning on all of the things that are occurring outside of this forum. But I think it's most important to put an exclamation point as I open of who we are, what we do, why we do it. Critically important today as it is every day. The Department of War Cyber Defense Command and the Defense Information Systems Agency provide the path for our data to get to our commanders to make effective decisions. Our cyber warfighters are in a persistent daily contact with adaptive adversaries. We must ensure command and control is effective and provide decision advantage to all of our warfighters as they execute the nation's mission. This is the essence of our profession, one that demands deep technical competency applied through our warfighting values. Forging the force is a warfighting imperative. How we as leaders answer the call, how we find the right people, validate their skills against a qualification standard, and keep them in the fight is a pressing readiness issue. When I was asked to participate in this summit, I had no reservations, no hesitation. The focus is forging a qualified cyber force. I add emphasis to the word qualified. How do we know that our forces are actually trained and ready to accomplish their mission? It's not a new challenge. The military has a deep and well-established doctrine built on 2 centuries of warfighting, designed to give commanders confidence that the forces that they send to war will accomplish the mission. Although the principles are timeless, our application must be agile and adapted to the unique complexity of our continuously changing and evolving operating environment in the cyberspace warfighting domain. My perspective of readiness is shaped by joint doctrine, arguably through an Army lens, but joint doctrine nonetheless. We have a framework, PSRT, personnel, supply, readiness, training. Do you have the people? Do you have the equipment? Is the equipment serviceable? And are your people trained to execute the mission using that equipment? Any former assistant S3s in the room? I know one's going to own up to that. More than a handful, right? So Defense Readiness Reporting System, DERS, I get a little shudder, right? Remember that login screen? I don't think it's changed. But it works because it forces us to think about, do I have the people? Do I have the equipment? Is the equipment serviceable? And am I trained? Are those people trained on that equipment? And when we were captains and assistant S3s, we made little stoplight charts and PowerPoint slides to make sure that we briefed and had an understanding of whether or not the tank was serviceable, and you had a driver, a gunner, a tank commander, and a loader that were qualified and trained to execute on it. We understand how to do this. This morning, I want to dive into the personnel and the training aspects of the PSRT readiness standard that we understand in the joint community. Across DCDC and DISA, we are driving a transformation to deliver information architecture that is resilient, data-centric, and able to function under extreme pressure. This includes building security into the design using zero trust principles, advanced data engineering, and integrated threat intelligence, all while automating our boundary defenses to clear the known knowns from the fight. By engineering a system that automates routine tasks, we free our most talented warfighters from the mundane so that they can dominate decisive operations. We have to use the tools to unleash the talent. We need the talent to be focused on hunting advanced adversaries, developing novel tools, ensuring our freedom of action, optimizing delivery, and dynamically overcoming network challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you about dynamically overcoming network challenges in defending the operating environment in a fight. It's happening right now. Thankfully, I have trained and ready Deputy Director and Deputy Commanding General that have the helm up at Fort Meade right now as we overcome dynamic challenges that require the depth of thought, the ingenuity, the innovation. The number of times that I have turned around in the Ops Center and said, use your brains, use the skills that you have developed, and solve the problem that is currently presented to our warfighters in harm's way. And for 4 weeks straight, they've met the call. They've met the challenge based off of being trained and ready. When our workforce is qualified, it imbues confidence, individual confidence, and the ability to execute. This leads to demonstrated competence. Ultimately, that establishes trust with leadership. If a subordinate has earned your trust, and that subordinate trusts that you are going to give well-valued and disciplined instruction and guidance, that unleashes mission command. Disciplined initiative to leverage innovation, to leverage ingenuity, and to solve the problem. But it's predicated on having a trained and qualified force. Who's the youngest person in the room today? No one's going to own up to that one. No one has to raise their hand. Somebody that's currently competing is probably the youngest that's participating in the summit this week. And as I make eye contact with Rags, West Point better win this. I mean, they got a little scar tissue. Ashley, I think that under Rags's leadership, the United States Military Academy has a pretty good record of winning these competitions. I don't know what's going on with VMI, but they're going to be trained and ready by the end of this summit. I think there's a bug in the system, frankly. But the reason I ask about who's the youngest person in the room, right? When I talk to audiences about how we recruit our people in the Army, I talk about the 18-year-old that raises her or his hand and says, I'm going to join the fighting force. Well, nothing about that 18-year-old ensures that they know how to put 25 millimeter ammunition into the Bushmaster cannon on a Bradley. Nothing about what they did up to that point in their life trained them to operate that weapon system. So we shouldn't expect that they know how to operate it. We have to lead them through training, ultimately through qualification, to such that they establish their confidence in how to use the weapon system. And as leaders, we establish confidence and trust that they know how to execute the warfight. Why do we treat it differently in the cyberspace warfighting domain? Why do we deviate from PSRT? We shouldn't. It's absolutely a sound framework for ensuring that when someone raises his or her right hand, swears the oath to the Constitution, and decides to be part of our team, that they're trained and ready on the weapon system that we present to them in order to execute with confidence at time and place of need. Catchphrase of a readiness revolution. That's Colonel Manny Matos' phrase. He's the J7 from DISA. I agree with it. It's a revolution. We need to execute using a framework that we understand in order to ensure that every person that we ask to execute the mission has confidence and trust to be able to execute at speed. Our revolution begins with acquiring elite talent. Our most significant advantage has always been our people, the innovators, the problem solvers, the war fighters who will run to the sound of the guns, not away from them. To get them on our team, we must treat talent acquisition as a critical warfighting enabler, one that demands speed, precision, and agility. We cannot afford a peacetime process when we are in the fight every day. We recently developed a concept for targeted hiring events to put a new and adaptive model into action. Really, it's just intuitive, right? Put the right people in the room at a hiring event to ensure that you hire the right people. But it sounds cool if I call it a strike team. So we put a strike team together, right? In our J1, Ms. Katrina Logan, raise your hand, please, ma'am, is helping us build the strike team. Yes, I need an HR professional because you have to understand what it means to actually bring someone into government service. But I also need the technical expert that knows what we're trying to hire for. I need to put them together and take them to a hiring event so that when someone says, I have these skills, the person who knows what skills we need on our team is standing right there to talk to them and make a dynamic assessment. Does this person have the skills that we need? Yes, you need a resume. Yes, we're going to review it. But why don't I have the conversation on the spot at the hiring event? And then once I determine, you know what, this person actually would be a great fit for the position that I'm currently attempting to hire against. Why don't I then walk them back into a room where the HR professional is sitting and waiting to fill out the right paperwork and on the spot offer a contingency job offer? Yes, you still have to have a secret clearance, and yes, there are a number of things that you have to go through. So it's a contingency job offer, and we have to follow that up. But why don't I recruit that individual on the spot? Instead of a model that says, well, let me write a position description, let me send that off to a whole bunch of HR folks, let me spend a month talking about it, let me then post the job on USA Jobs, let me wait 3 weeks, let me take 150 resumes, 100 of which are not even relevant, then perhaps contact that individual, then perhaps convene a board to discuss whether or not we can hire somebody. And 6 months later, everybody that had the talent is already on somebody else's team. That ain't going to work. So instead, why don't I put our technical professional next to our HR professional, take them into the hiring event, talk to people on the spot, and give them a contingency job officer right then and there. How many contingency job offers did we issue, ma'am? 47? 47. On the spot, one event. Within 3 weeks, 32 people in the workforce. Clap for Miss Logan, our J1. Thank you, ma'am. How many hiring managers do we have here today? We have 12 of our hiring managers here today. Anybody looking for a job? The P and PSRT, we're ready, right? So today, folks listening online, we have 12 of our hiring managers here to talk to you because we are hiring. There's 61 positions that are open currently within the Defense Information Systems Agency where I need technical aptitude to get after the fight. And if you're not here today, the team will be here again on Wednesday. Wednesday? I have to check. I don't want to outrun the punt coverage. Hey, but don't argue with the results, right? At DISA, the old process, I threw a grenade into that room. We are now going to execute our strike team approach to surgical hiring as the means by which we execute. So our team is here. Our team will be at TechNet Cyber in Baltimore. A number of different events. If you go on to our newly minted website, it will describe where those events are. I'm principally talking to folks that might be listening online, as most of you sitting in the room have jobs. Doesn't mean that you can't come work for me, though. Hey, getting talent onto our team is the first step. But then, just like the recruiting of the 18-year-old to go serve in the United States Army's infantry, that has to go through a training and qualification process, we need to do the same thing within DISA and DCDC. Again, it's the qualification that gives commanders the confidence that our workforce is ready to execute their mission. I emphasize ready. Training on a particular system is not enough. It's a continuous process. We need to make sure that our workforce is actually training and qualifying on the system that they'll actually use. So again, forgive me going back to my Army examples, but if you are in the U.S. Army infantry, mechanized infantry, and you are manning a Bradley fighting vehicle, you have a driver, you have a gunner, and you have a Bradley commander. And those three individuals train together so that when the Bradley commander gives an order, the gunner loads the right ammunition, zeroes in on the right target, prioritized by the commander. The driver maneuvers the vehicle to the right spot so that you can engage with the 25 millimeter cannon. And by the way, if you've never done that, it's pretty awesome. Jumping out of planes is cool, but the first time you fire that 25 millimeter cannon, it's a life-changing event. However, if one of those people leaves the team, you're no longer qualified. And you have to go back to the range to ensure that your small unit of action, that crew, is certified and qualified to operate together. That's really important. Think about the skills that we require. It's great to say we're implementing a zero trust environment. Well, how? What are the tools that are part of that zero trust environment? What's your software-defined wide area network solution? What is your virtualization solution? What is your PKI solution? What is your logging solution? I can keep going, right? You have to put all of the tools together in a meaningful way in order to actually effectively implement a zero trust architecture, which, by the way, is the right answer. I'm a zero trust zealot. But it doesn't work if you don't put the tools together. Well, in order to meet the Department of War's standards for a properly implemented zero trust environment, there are 152 different tasks. Anybody in the room capable of accomplishing 152 different tasks simultaneously? Don't own up to that, or see Miss Logan afterward. You have to work as a small unit of action. Some folks have to be looking at host analysis, some people looking at network analysis, some people looking at data analysis, the aggregation of logs across all of those different systems that are put together in a meaningful way. That requires a team. And the team has to be trained on the actual tools that you're using, or else don't expect them to be effective. So build the training program on the systems that you actually have deployed in the operating environment, and then force individuals to demonstrate their proficiency. Then put the individuals together as a unit of action and ensure that the unit of action can implement effectively and execute at speed in a dynamic and changing operating environment, and send them to the range. It's great that you have a cert that says that you know how to do certain skills. Show me. And show me alongside the 3 other people that are part of your unit of action that effectively know how to use a DISA Thunderdome Zero Trust implementation with all of the right tools. Then I have confidence that you know what you're doing. Then you earn my trust. Then you execute through mission command and you solve hard problems through your innovation and your ingenuity. And I have no idea where in this speech I'm supposed to be right now. I mean, let me see. A wartime mentality, our responsibility as leaders. Okay, I buy into that. That is absolutely, that is effective. That is necessary, because we need to put it all together, right? We need to find the right talent. We already have blown up the old process. Use one that gets talented individuals onto the team rapidly. Put them through a training and qualification program so that they have individual and collective confidence in their ability to execute. Lead them such that they can operate at speed. And then every once in a while, turn around on the Ops Center floor in your 3-star headquarters and marvel at how awesome your team is. With that, what questions do you have?
All right, so we do have time for questions. So there are microphones strategically placed throughout the auditorium. Please step up to the mic.
We have time for questions because I didn't make it through all the pieces of paper in my speech. The team does an awesome job, by the way, of helping prepare me for things.
General, do better. But in all seriousness, there are mics throughout Please, since this event is being recorded, please step up to the mic, state your name, state your organization, and a brief question, and general entertainment. Thank you.
Sir, George Kabari from the Executive Agency for Cyber Training Ranges. Having written speeches for you, nothing's changed.
You write speeches well, George. It's good to see you.
Thanks, sir. Sir, you talked about going to the range, and I wonder if you can elaborate a little bit on the kinds of ranges. I mean, I think that that's one of the challenges in cyber. It's very simple. Here's your equipment, here's the range, but a little bit more challenging in the reality of what that looks like. But can you talk about what kind of ranges your team uses?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a Department of War wide problem to drive readiness, to drive qualification. However, my MO is to take a tractable problem and drive towards objective, tangible, and measurable outcomes to demonstrate proficiency. So cybersecurity service providers, CSSPs, as the DC commander, I write cyber tasking orders that go out to all of the CSSPs. If you've seen one, you've seen one. In terms of their demonstrated capabilities through a qualification process. So we took that problem on. And as the DISA director, I am responsible for a pretty significant CSSP footprint over a pretty significant portion of the Department of War information network. Importantly, as the DISA director, I don't have to ask anybody for resources or permission. I can just execute. So we built a training program. George, it wouldn't surprise you that it looks a lot like gunnery. And I used Bradley Gunnery as an example earlier. For CPB alum, looks a lot like gunnery, things that we have done previously, where you take your individual tasks, you take your collective tasks at increasing levels of complexity, and you demonstrate the operational effectiveness in a live environment where we are using artificial intelligence to change the scenario on a routine basis. You can't memorize the test, right? You set conditions and you put the left and right limits on the operating environment, and then you let AI do its thing in terms of presenting unique and challenging tasks to both individuals and collective units for their execution. So what we did, again, ensuring that we at DISA as a CSSP, leveraging our implementation of Zero Trust, it's a programmatic framework that we refer to as Thunderdome, but the tools that are implemented in our Zero Trust environment, we put into the live training program. So taking the enormity and complexity of the DoDIN, but zeroing in on what I consider a tractable problem where we can actually get to tangible and measurable results. So we led our first cohort through, I'll put in air quotes, a gunnery training model for CSSPs on Thunderdome. It started at the end of January. We completed on the 6th of March, and 100% of the individuals that went through the training program qualified. They also took a pre-test and a post-test and scored 40% higher on the post-test, having gone through the training. So early success, but success nonetheless that's driving us in the right direction. And in my pre-meeting before coming up on the stage today with my J7 was, get us there faster. When's the next iteration? What's the next cohort going? He's getting nervous and squirming. I can see him in my peripheral vision. But we got to keep moving. So taking the enormity and zeroing in on something that we can clearly define was our approach. And then we will continue to work with the Department of War CIO to figure out how do we horizontally scale that problem, and then how do we tackle additional problems with increased complexity from a DoDIN perspective.
Morning, sir. Jeremy Merrill. I'm with Athenian Solutions Group. Prior to being a defense contractor, I was a 28-year naval information warfare officer, the last 7 of that being at Fleet Cyber as the Force Readiness Manager, at NSA's National Cryptologic University, where I think we met for the first time, and then Cyber National Mission Force as a readiness officer. Throughout that time, and since then, excuse me, training has been the emphasis. Readiness, PSRT, stoplight charts, all that. You've got to invest, you've got to have good, ready people. But those of us that are paying attention are seeing training-focused contracts that are being awarded at the lowest price technically acceptable, not quality, more for low cost. And we're seeing that time and time again. And will that paradigm shift from training, minimal training dollars to really investing in the training programs that we're offering our people?
Yes, it will, is my short answer. You know, as U.S. Cybercom drives Cybercom 2.0, investment dollars, thank you to the department, to the administration, and to Congress for allocating significant resources towards our training. Thank you to the DoW-CIO that has lined up resources and training models to help us move at pace. I will tell you selfishly, from a DISA director perspective, I'm not focused on what is the cheapest. I'm focused on what is the most effective. I won't tell you which companies we contracted with, just to stay out of the proprietary components of that. But it's quality training, and cheap is not what I'm after. Quality is what we're after, and ensuring that our workforce again has the confidence to make modifications to a network under extreme conditions is really important. Let me unpack that statement just for a second, right? So if you make a configuration change in the operating environment today, there's an F-35 that is over Iran. There's a Patriot battery that is sitting in the desert. If your configuration change denies the ability to get the right data to the right place at the right time, that's a bad day for the United States of America. Can't afford that. So as operators make modifications to the operating environment, they must have confidence in their level of training. I must have confidence in their qualification standards so that when they make that change, that keeps our adversaries out of the operating environment, but still keeps the operating environment delivering data to the right place at the right time, is critical. So it's about quality, not necessarily about cost. I don't have deep pockets. However, getting it right is what's most important. Thanks.
The Marine on the right here.
Good morning, General. Master Gunner Sergeant Dowdell, Marine Forces Reserve. Sir, as we move toward a model of surgical hiring and precision qualification in the cyber domain, what changes do you believe are most urgent in how we identify, assess, certify cyber talent, especially given the speed at which technical relevance decays compared to traditional military subsets?
Yeah, helping find the right people is really important. You know, I have been working with Mark Gorak from the Department of War CIO for some time now in developing assessments that help us zero in on folks that have the right knowledge, skills, and behaviors. I think that that's really important, right? Because again, I go back to the number of resumes that you get. You still have to look at the resumes, and that is a time. So let's look at the right resumes in order to zero in and focus. I also, in a prior life, in prior jobs, have had the privilege of working alongside several of our institutions of higher learning that asked us specifically, what do you need a graduate to be able to accomplish? What skills do you need? And we've worked with a number of universities, and a number of universities have gone on to get accreditation in their cybersecurity programs. I'm looking at those places. Let's go to those places where we invested in building the curriculum so we have confidence that the folks that graduate have the baseline knowledge. I take the baseline knowledge and the foundation and apply it to the actual implementation, and now I'm ready to rock. So when I say surgical hiring, it's finding the right people, using the tools that are available that are being presented to us, using the authorities that Congress has given us, using a decade plus worth of development and investment into academia to develop and build the right qualified individuals. Those are the individuals that we're talking to. Those are the individuals that Ms. Logan's going to bring onto the team as fast as 3 weeks, not 6 months or a year later. Thank you.
Thank you, General.
We have time for one last question in the middle here, please.
Okay, and mine's probably the most complex.
Yes, ma'am. Let's hit it.
I want to talk about electricity. So in 2021, I think the time period anyway, the Air Force Studies Board of the National Academy of Sciences of Engineering Medicine and in Sciences, Engineering Medicine, NASA, convened a study to look at the problem of just so many more information-centric devices in very, very much smaller form shape being deployed to the tactical edge. And the question was, how are we going to power all that stuff? And the answer was, we didn't think about that. And so the recommendation that came out of that study was that electricity availability be part of the readiness metric that was calculated for the cyber weapons. But of course, that means that there has to be people who understand electricity and who understand how to jury rig electricity at the tactical edge out of all kinds of things, small wind generators, small solar cells, damming up a little creek and running a couple of battery powers over, delivering batteries by drone, all these things were looked at. So when I think about your example of the Bradley team, you don't mention the guy who's driving the gas because that's a different infrastructure. But when you're talking about a cyber team that is deployed with the advanced AI to the edge, that is deployed with the small cloud to the edge, that needs the electricity, needs the fresh water too, frankly, how are we addressing that part of the cyber workforce training problem?
So, great question.
And I'll go sit down.
Yes, ma'am. Lots to unpack in it, but since you took me back to Bradley's, answer the question that you wanted to be asked. A Bradley doesn't cross the line of departure without understanding where the next refuel point is, because if you run out of gas, you can't continue to fight. We cannot take systems into theater if they can't be powered effectively. So go back to PSRT, and I focused on the P and the T. Well, the S is, do you have the equipment? The R is the equipment ready? Will the equipment work? And a component that we think about all the time in the space that I operate in is the power. Do you have sufficient power? That problem is only going to become significantly more relevant as we start powering up AI compute towards the tactical edge. Anybody ever look at what a small form factor AI device looks like when it's through its heat signature? It's sucking a lot of power in order to generate the results that it's responsible for. I get to cheat just a little bit in the context of this question at the strategic level where I'm operating as the DISA director and the commander of DCDC, because that very forward edge challenge is a challenge that my Army, Marine, Navy, Air Force, to lesser extent the Space Force, have to worry about. I will, because I used to stay at a Holiday Inn and was formerly part of the Army Cyber Center of Excellence, I do know that ensuring that we have folks with the right skill sets that understand power sufficiently are part of the team. Danced around that question a little bit, it is critically important. We are not ignoring it. Making sure that we have folks that have the right skill sets are really, that's a service challenge now. as the DISA director, I'm looking at the power problem from how do I power warehouse-sized data centers that are cranking AI? How do I figure out how to power AI in support of a geographic combatant command in theater? Not ignoring the problem, but it is one where we have to have folks with the right skill sets, potentially as even a new work role as we look at power consumption, again, specifically related to AI workloads.
Thank you so much, General. Please join me in a round of applause for General Stanton. I also challenge you to seek out and spend time with Miss Logan, his J1. So she has figured out a way to blow up the hiring system. And so I think we all could learn something from her playbook. Thank you for being here, ma'am.